welcome to the Guns Magazine Presents the Guns Podcast. I'm your host and the editor of Guns Magazine, Brent Wheat. Thanks for joining us here on one of the world's biggest gun talk programs, both audio and video, as we chat with the interesting folks who make up the world of shooting. Before we get started, I always ask, please like and subscribe. We appreciate that a lot. Today, our guest is none other than, wait for it, Roy Huntington. Good morning, Roy.
I'm hardly ever on the show.
Yeah. I want to make you the official co-host, and
No.
you're like that teenage crush. I've chased you, and you just resisted.
The only person I do what I'm told is when my wife Susie tells me to do something.
Yeah.
Then I go, okay, yes, ma'am.
Well, today's show is going to be fun and interesting. We're gonna let me grab my visual props here. It's these things. It's leather and it's Kydex, but mainly we're going to talk about leather and why leather is still a thing. And I know our audience loves that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And
that's one of the reasons right there, because it smells good.
Exactly. Well, it's funny you say that, because when I was going through the closet, the island of misfit holsters and holsters laying around and all that, I ran across a Mitch Rosen holster, and I'm like, oh, that just oh. And I've got old school friends that say, remember when ships were made of wood and men were made of iron and all guns were blued and carried in leather, and it's like, yeah, I get it. But, nowadays we're in the world of polymer and Kydex and ARs, and we've taken great pains to say there's nothing wrong with that, but leather is still a thing. And there's a lot of holsters out there that are leather, and you shouldn't feel less of a high-speed tactical operator Delta Ninja because you choose leather. So this is kind of a loaded question, but Roy, why do you choose leather?
I'm old enough to go all the way back before plastic holsters. I do remember Pachmayr introduced a plastic holster. This was probably in the 70s, early 70s. And it was more of an injection molded, like the rubber grips on Pachmayr grips. It was kind of made out of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it was terrible, and we all laughed at it, and and it was sweaty, and it was uncomfortable, and and it died a natural death. And but then, of course, later on, Blade Tech, Tim Wagner at Blade Tech was basically, I think, the first guy to really cross over and say, I'm going to make this out of Kydex. And in those days, they did one at a time, by hand. I remember he actually used an etching pen to inscribe on the back of the holster, Blade Tech fits a Browning high power, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? I tried them, and I found that they worked okay as like a range holster, like an outside scabbard range holster.
Exactly.
Something like that. They worked out pretty good. They were easy. They wore the finish on your gun quite a bit because the dust inside it, and you slide your whole gun in and out, it would like kind of grind on it. But so yeah, I think they have their place as it evolved, and I saw more like pocket holsters, inside the waistband holsters, appendix carry holsters. I've tried them all, and for whatever reason, it's some genetic trait of mine. They're just terribly uncomfortable to me. They poke and prod, so I've never really been a fan of them. I understand their value. I understand that many people like them. I support them. I've written up many Kydex holsters over the years. I want that side of the industry to grow. But for me personally, leather holsters seem to be more comfortable, and as you say, they just have a little more soul. When I have my favorite custom 1911 in a beautiful, Mitch Rosen leather holster, it's like the world's a good place.
I'm going to use that as a pull quote in something, because it's absolutely true. And, that was one of the points I'd kind of jotted down, that the heritage and tradition, and there's nothing wrong with heritage and tradition so long as it doesn't impede you in any way. And when we're talking leather holsters, as long as it's a good quality leather holster, it's not impeding you. And in a lot of instances, it's actually helping you. So that's what we wanted to talk about.
And it's interesting. I have seen because there are diehard leather holster people. I've had this holster for 25 years, right? Well, that's a really bad idea because holsters wear out.
Exactly.
And I remember there was a guy who had a Glock and a leather holster. He sat down in his car, the Glock went off. Right.
Yeah.
Well, then he analyzed it and he realized, and he showed a picture of the holster. And this thing should have been thrown away 10 years before. The seams were like falling apart, and stuff like that. And so it wasn't a holster malfunction. It was an owner malfunction. And people say, oh, well, Kydex, that doesn't wear out like leather. Well, au contraire, it does, and it can crack and it can chip. And where the screws go through can crack, the rubber bumpers will dry out, and so all this stuff has a shelf life. It really does. And I think a lot of people don't realize that because we all have a box of holsters.
Exactly. So, the island of misfit holsters.
Yeah. There aren't really many people I know who carry one holster, one gun all the time. That's all they do. Now, if they do, I have a lot of respect for them. But most people say, hey, I'll carry this gun for the next few days. And then, maybe I'll go to this one. Or I just bought a new holster. I'm going to try that. Because we're all always looking for the perfect holster.
Yep.
Which doesn't exist, by the way. So
it does not exist. And there's something about the character and how leather ages, and it makes you feel like you can see the experience you've had together with your holster when you have it. Now, I'm not saying keep it till it's worn out, just like you said, but when you see a holster that's broken in real good, fits your gun good, got a little bit of wear, might have a little bit of sweat mark on it, it just inspires you that, I've done this before. We're a team. I trust it. I trust my gear. And I know that's all kind of zen and all that, but there's something to that. I'm confident in what I'm carrying, and I know if something happens, I can use it effectively.
It's friendly. I mean, to me, leather is analog, plastic is digital, right? So we have digital tools. And they work and they do a lot of really interesting things. But we also have analog tools, which do have, I think, to me, a bit more soul. When I pick up my plane in the shop and I plane some wood, you do feel that more of a connection and more of a, you feel good about it. But when I turn on, the power Dremel tool thing and grind something, I'm just doing the work is all. There's no soul there. Can I say one thing though?
Yeah.
Speaking of soul, everyone always picks up a holster and smells it, right?
They do.
Or most people do.
Yeah.
Right. And they always go, oh gosh, I just love that smell of the leather holster and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, when I retired from the police department, but let me say, before that, I decided I wanted to make leather holsters because most of us go through that phase. I found out that it was harder than it looks. It's expensive to have all the tools, but it gave me good insight. So when I retired in 98, I went to work for Bianchi International. I was their national law enforcement sales director. But part of what I did while I was there is that I would go spend days on the production floor. And work with people to learn how did we make holsters, right? Yeah. And so I did all of the jobs were there, and it was really fun because there were a lot of mostly Hispanic people there, and this was the first time anyone from quote the front office came out and spent all that time with them. So I don't know if you can hear Cassie's barking at a fox or something in the background. But I had a great time, and it was really interesting because it dawned on me then, because leather by itself really doesn't have any smell.
Really?
And so, that wonderful smell you smell in leather is the treatment, the chemical treatment.
All the deadly chemicals. Okay.
Yeah, it's the chemical treatment when they tan the leather.
Yeah.
Which has its own distinctive kind of smell. And then at Bianchi, they used an oil that was sort of invented and formulated by John Bianchi with a very distinctive, that's a Bianchi holster smell. Yeah. And then so they would just dip the holsters in this oil at a certain point in the production phase. And then sure enough, when I worked area where you bag the holsters, right? You pick one up and smell it, and it's like, there's that holster. Oh gosh, it smells so good while you're
Yeah.
smelling all the chemicals and everything.
That's funny because everybody thinks, oh, that's such a traditional and just harkens back to a lot of things, and you don't realize you're smelling bad chemicals. But
You're smelling the polish and the sizing and all. But I mean, it is distinctive and it is nice and it makes us feel good. So what the hell?
It does. Because I was going to say, I defy you to walk into a leather shop, whether it's just leather goods in general, a holster shop, a tack shop, anything like that. As soon as that smell hits you, it's like,
yep.
Yes.
Like when you go,
it smells like the ages.
Yep. I live in Missouri, and there's a lot of tack stores and cowboy western stores and stuff. And you're exactly right. When you walk in there, if there's a saddle display, it's like, you just like, can I say one more thing about leather holsters, which is kind of related, but not related? I used to go to the Great Western Gun Show in the Pomona, and I used to sell leather holsters, right? I was connected. I had industry contacts. I had a lot of leather holsters. And people would always come up to my table and pick up a holster and squeeze it, right? So here's like this form-fitting, molded leather holster, and they would pick it up and squeeze it. And I never understood why. And I used to say, why are you squeezing that? Because that has nothing to do with the holster.
And it's not toilet paper, for those who remember squeezing the Charmin.
Yeah, all you're doing is distorting it, And they say, well, I don't know, I just want to, there was no answer. And I equate those people are the same people who, when they go to a gun store and they pick up a box of brand new Remington 230 grain 45 ACP ball ammo, they have to peel the end flap open and open it up and pick one up and look at it.
Yeah.
And then in the process, they usually tear the end flap.
Yeah.
Right. Which now means that the guy who owns the store has to sell that at a discount.
Yeah.
Right. So don't be that guy.
I got to admit, Roy, in the past, I've done that. I know.
We all have.
It's like, I guess you want to see what you're getting. But I always buy it. If I won't open something unless I plan on action, or at least have a real serious thought about buying it. So let's talk a little bit about leather. And I want to take great pains, which we do pretty much every week, and I think most people get it, but we're not fanboys of virtually anything. We like leather. We love leather, but we see the point for Kydex and all that. But having said that, leather does have some drawbacks, and let's just touch on that briefly, because I think where I can be a good instructor is I've done everything wrong over the years. I've made every mistake, and just by the grace of goodness, I've survived it all. And I've also destroyed a bunch of holsters. So, leather is, even though it's treated with those chemicals, it's a natural product, and it can be destroyed. And I think water, moisture is probably the number one way. Either your sweat, which is horribly corrosive, when you get leather soaked in basically brine and then dries out, it just is horrible on leather. Or of course, getting it wet in the rain. And, I've fallen in rivers, I've fallen in lakes, I've fallen in puddles, but, you've had even more experience. I didn't realize, of course, Roy, you've worked at a leather shop and make your own. Talk about some of the ways that people destroy holsters and how they can prevent that.
Well, the first thing they do that's bad is for some reason, they think oiling a holster is a good idea. So if you have an old-fashioned cowboy pouch holster, you can put some kind of leather oil on it. It won't hurt anything. But if you put oil on a formed holster like this, then you're going to end up with a deformed holster. It'll soften it. Honestly, the best treatment for a leather holster is just good old-fashioned shoe polish. I would use, Kiwi brand, waxy kind of shoe polish. That works really good. And then get a little brush and rub it into the stitching, because that keeps the stitching from drying out and then breaking ultimately. And the other thing to do, and you were exactly right, is if your holster gets wet, like soaking wet, like you pull it out from your inside the waistband holster and it's like sopping wet from your hot Florida day, or you fall in the swimming pool or the lake, like you said, the very worst thing you can do is force it to dry faster with a blow dryer or put it in the
Oh
oven
yeah.
or something like that, because it'll turn it brittle, and it will start to break it down. So the best thing to do if that happens is, if it's sweaty, it's okay. You can rinse it off if you want to, but it's not really critical. But if it's a fitted holster, the best thing to do is get the gun that it's fitted for, wrap the gun in saran wrap, put the gun in the holster, and then just let it dry. you know,
Yep.
don't put it in the sun or anything. Just let it dry. And then you'll find the leather has a memory and everything will be okay after that.
Yeah.
Did we
You
cover
know,
that? Yeah.
I'd forgotten that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Either I dreamed this or it was real. There was a couple of holster manufacturers that their holsters were so tight that that's one of their break-in instructions was wet the holster, wrap the gun in plastic, and leave it set. Overnight or however long it takes the leather to dry. Did I dream that up or was that a thing?
No, yeah, that was a thing for some holsters. I know Mitch Rosen's holsters are fit like that. They're fit like a Les Baer 1911.
Yeah.
It's called a hard fit. And so, Les is funny. He always says, people say, I can't open up my new gun. Les says, yeah, good. It's supposed to be like that, right? He says, take 500 rounds and it'll break in. Now it's set. And Mitch's holsters are like that. You almost can't get the gun into a new holster from Mitch, but he sells a product called Leather Lightning, which is, I'm not sure what, I think some kind of a silicon-based lubricant. And you put that on the inside of the holster, and then you can get the gun in. And then, so basically, he says, along with some other manufacturers, just basically put the gun in and out of the holster a whole bunch of times, and pretty soon it fits beautifully. A lot of holsters, if they fit like really easily initially, then of course, like you said, leather's natural, so it's going to stretch out like a pair of shoes do. And so then you're going to have a little bit more play than you wanted, maybe. So, yeah, there you go.
There you go. Well, take care of your holster. It'll take care of you. And the only thing I'd add is products made for horse tack, saddles, bridles, things like that. You need to be a little careful. They're focused on keeping leather from drying out and being brittle, so it can kind of be a little too oily. But for the most part, most of that stuff is a lot better than the stuff you buy at Big Box Wallyville, and is leather treatment. And I've not had a lot of good luck with that. But I go to the farm store, and everything from my boots to my holsters, I've got some special patented miracle goo that seems to do a pretty good job on it.
Yeah. No, I agree. But again, like I said, just good old fashioned Kiwi shoe polish keeps it alive. I think one of the things about leather, at least for me too, is that I think the fact that if you get a strong side leather concealment scabbard, or you get one of the old fashioned Roy Baker's pancake holsters, they used to call them, and they were kind of biggish, and they were a bit uncomfortable when you first wore them, but over time, they do form themselves to you. And then they become comfortable, and they are, like you said, they're like an old friend. It's like, oh, you put your holster on, it's like, fits, it knows right where to sit, it knows right where to do. And that's where Kydex won't do that. There was a company on what were they, 1776 leather, I think it
17, is. 1791.
91, yeah, I can't remember their name, but they have a pretty innovative thing that they made it was essentially a holster blank, and then you would use it to fit your gun. You put it in hot water, you mold it around your gun. Right. Yeah. And so then it would fit your exact gun. Maybe you've got an accessory on it that's not normally on a gun. And so that was a bit unusual. I know they're still out. I think they still do it. But that gives you some versatility that you wouldn't have with a hard fit Kydex.
Right.
So in other words, you can have a gun that you can, or a holster that you can form to your particular gun, but it's still leather, it's still comfortable, it still has all of those attributes. That's the only thing, and I know people are going to comment and say that we're idiots and we're fuds and we don't know what we're talking about. And I'm just saying this applies to me, is the Kydex being Kydex, and it's strong and it's stiff. I just find it difficult to get it to be comfortable for me.
Yeah.
They never sort of break in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, let's move on and talk about choosing a leather holster. And this one I've been playing with as we've talked is a Falco brand, and Falco has been a great friend of ours and sponsor. And I hadn't really heard of them. They're a European company. They've been involved in leather work for a long, long time, and they make a lot of holsters. And they're really coming on strong in the United States. And I grabbed one of these holsters as a good example of a good example. I'm not even sure what this one's for. I just got it the other day, but as you said, Roy, it's stiff and really thick leather, good quality stitching, no loose threads. It's not got a cheap snap, and we can almost do an entire show on snaps because there's everything from the garbage you get off of, say, Amazonian to good quality that Major League holster manufacturers use for their thumb brakes. But it's a bottom line of spend a little money and get a good quality holster, whether you do Mitch Rosen, Falco, any of Galco. I mean, there's a whole bunch of good holster options out there, much more so than there used to be. But I think my big tip for selecting a holster, aside from what pleases you and fits well and is useful, but spend some money. A good quality holster is not inexpensive, and we, like Roy said, we're always looking for the perfect holster. It's even worse if you find the perfect holster and then realize, well, it's a flimsy piece of garbage, and then you end up spending the money all over again. So that's my big thing is you look at the price of a good quality holster from any of the mainstream manufacturing, you're going to go, wow, that's kind of expensive for a piece of dead cow, but it's worth it. It is worth it in the long run in terms of their longevity and how they safely and securely hold your firearm.
Well, it's the old, if buy a motorcycle and they buy a $10 helmet. And so,
Yes.
So people say, if you have a $10 head, then buy a $10 helmet. I owned a gun store for a while and I worked in a gun store for a while, and it never ceased to amaze me. People would come in and spend $800 or $1,000 on a gun, and then they would go buy a $8, soft nylon holster.
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was that same thing. They would say, well, I'm not going to spend $100 for a holster. And there's no convincing them otherwise. There really isn't. Yeah. In the early days, there were some small kind of one-man leather shops, custom really in the early days. But they weren't real popular. I mean, people tended to still price point shop, and the whole concealed carry thing wasn't like it has been over the last 25 or 30 years. And so people tended to make do with what they had, hunter holsters, you'd get them and you'd see them cut down and taped up and, things that people did. I mean, then Bianchi, Neil Perkins of Safariland, and the early days of Galco and a handful of other ones came out, Kirkpatrick Leather. So there was like about 8 maybe or 10 big shops. They may have started as custom holster makers, but they became production holster makers. And I think that was the first time that high quality leather at an affordable price became available to the general gun buying public. In other words, you could get the Bianchi catalog, and there were holsters reliably designed, consistently manufactured of good quality, that were affordably priced. And I think that was the beginning of the evolution of people understanding that, well, you know what, there is something to this, and that there are people who know what they're doing, and there are people who don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So, and of course, like I said, I learned how to make holsters and knife sheaths and all that. And it was really interesting. More than anything, it taught me what goes into a really high quality holster, that there's a lot of thought. That's just not a piece of leather and some stitching. I mean, there was a lot of design elements and elegance sometimes in the most simple holsters. Thad Ribka makes, I think, arguably some of the most elegant holsters ever made, and they're as minimalist as humanly possible. I mean, it's almost like you take everything away that doesn't need to be on a holster, and you get a TR holster. And they're aesthetically pleasing, and they perform. And I think that's something you need to look for. So, when you jump on the website of this holster maker and there's gazillions of designs all over the place, always be thinking about that. It's like, what do I need to do? What do I need to get rid of that's going to be the most basic thing I can use to get my job done here? And that's the one you start with. But you're still going to end up with a box full of holsters.
I was going to say that is one of the points I didn't really write down, but it's absolutely true. You just have to accept the fact that you're going to have holsters because you get one and it's pretty good, but it's never perfect, or you'll buy one that you're absolutely sure is the greatest holster ever made, and it turns out to be a piece of garbage. So it's just part of it. Don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to experiment, kids. You will find one that works good. And one of the worst things in the world is when you get a holster, this is it. I found the perfect holster, and you carry it for a long time, and then it's kind of getting long in the tooth. I need a new one. Oh, they quit making it. That's just awful.
It's really true. Well, plus people, your attitude changes, your likes change. You decide to carry different
waistline
guns.
changes.
Your waistline changes. Yeah. Suddenly that inside the waistband holster just isn't quite as comfortable as it used to be. But you think, oh, well, I'm going to be 007 and carrying a shoulder holster. You try that for a while and you realize that that's uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Or then now I'm going to go strong side. Now I'm going to go cross draw. Now I'm going to try pocket carry. Now I'm going to try appendix carry. Now, the list is virtually endless because in every one of those situations, there's hundreds of designs, And that's why I think it's interesting. I know, and I'm sure you've had this happen. When I was editor at Handgunner, I would get a letter to the editor or an email. I have a 38 revolver. What holster should I get?
Well, that's a start.
Yeah,
there's a lot more to talk about from there.
What model? What job do you do with it? What's your lifestyle? What are your expectations? Is it a defensive gun? Is it a hunting gun? Is it? The list goes on. And so the moral of that story is that you have to play that game yourself. So you go to the store and buy this X new pistol, and then you look at the guy behind the counter and say, which holster should I get? Well, don't rely on them to ask you all these questions, because they'll just reach over and get whatever holster they want to sell next and say, that one, that's the best holster, right?
Yep. I stake my reputation on it.
Yeah. Stop and think, okay, I just bought this gun for concealed carry. Will I carry it concealed? Yes. All right. Do I wear a coat usually? No. Am I right-handed? Will I want to carry it on my right side? Probably. Inside of my belt or outside of my belt. So see, you can eliminate those things. And finally, just by rote, you're going to end up with sort of a series of circumstances that you can then learn. You need to apply those to decide on which holster design. Then when you jump on the Bianchi website, you can go right hand, outside the waistband, thumb break, revolver, and now you're looking at the genre of holster that you want. So, and you can do that. You don't have to be an expert. Look, we just did it. We're not experts.
Yep. I'm an expert at making mistakes, so this is all School of Hard Knocks, University of Life.
All been there, man. I wrote the handgun leather column for about 8 years before I joined Handgunner as editor, and I saw every holster that came down the pack, and at the time, most were leather. There were some people played with other things. The early days of Kydex, sewn holsters from canvas, and you never knew what I was going to get in. Some really oddball things, metal holsters, but it really served. I was fortunate because it gave me this wide exposure to all kinds of carry ideas and whatnot. But the thing that I think stuck to me mostly is that there were some basic tenets that work. Strong side, vertical, simple scabbard type holster, right? Yeah. Open top, but form fitting. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty bulletproof. And if you look, everybody makes one. Right? And there's a reason everybody makes one. It's because it works, right? Strong side thumb brake. There's a reason why everybody in the world makes one of those. There's a belt slide style holster, which is kind of a minimalist kind of a holster. Everyone makes one of those, you know? And so, when you see these oddball double reverse small the back twist with semi-automatic click and all that kind of stuff, man, they're the only people doing it. It's probably not a good idea.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I was just thinking, and I don't even know where it is. I think it's in the storage unit with all the holsters that really didn't make the grade, but I had a concealed carry rig for my off duty when I was at the cop shop. It had my gun, it had a magazine, it had a light, and a handcuff pouch.
I remember those.
Yeah, that lasted about 2 days. It's like when you sit down and go, ow.
It weighs 37 pounds,
Yeah.
I've seen the Europeans were always good with, they liked the whole idea of the holster with a mag pouch attached to it.
Yeah.
That's a real European thing, you know?
And it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
You've got a gun in your hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, ow. I know what you mean.
A couple of things, though. I did want to say that talking about criteria for holsters, this is something that gets asked a lot, is what should a holster do? Carry your gun, right? But there's a couple of things that, like my friends at Gunsight always point out, is it should cover the trigger guard, and even like the minimalist summer specials, Milt Sparks, Yaki slides, things like that. If you look at them, they cover the trigger guard, and that's to prevent your chapstick from end up shooting you in the leg. And then a holster should hold the gun against 1G. Now, if you've got a level 3 security and you can do calisthenics and stand on your head, that's great. But for real earth people, especially those just carrying concealed or a hunter, it should hold your gun without the retention device for 1G. That means if you end up standing on your head or upside down, as I sometimes have had happen, your gun should stay with you, because I've told that story before. There's nothing worse than chasing somebody through the woods at night and realizing, my gun's not with me anymore. So that was the day I learned the value of a good holster. So,
boy, you're exactly right. I had an early ankle holster, and I was chasing a bad guy one day, and it was at nighttime. And I was running down the street chasing him, right? And all of a sudden, in front of me, I see a gun sort of dancing in the air, and I just reached out and grabbed it, and I honestly didn't really know what was happening. I thought maybe he threw it at me, or I wasn't real sure, and I grabbed it and stuck it in my pocket, and then we got arrested the bad guy and all that kind of stuff, and then it dawned on me it had come from my ankle holster.
Yeah, that's not good.
It was a thumb brake ankle holster that it just. I will say that the holster was getting pretty worn, and it was my own stupid fault, That brings me I want to circle back to the thing about really idiotic holster designs. There was a guy his name escapes me, and so does the name of the holster company, which I would say if I could remember it. But he used to stand at the SHOT Show and demonstrate these every year at the SHOT Show, and it was he called it a duty holster for police, but it also could be used as a concealed holster. And it was this mechanical conglomeration. And how it worked was you had an auto pistol, and you would put the magazine in your auto pistol, and you would put it in the holster without the round chambered. Mm-hmm. And so his contention was it's 100% safe. And you're right, it is, for the bad guy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so his contention was, now when you need to deploy your gun, you would push the gun down into the holster, which would rack the slide. Yes, and then when you pulled it out, then the round would chamber, and then now you could do your business. Right. Mm-hmm. And well, I stopped and I looked up at him, and I looked around for the candid camera. I kept thinking, is Alan Funt, if you remember him, going to come out and say, ha ha ha, you're on candid camera, right? But no, it was completely legitimate. And you know what was interesting is he went to the SHOT Show for years. Yeah. Used to demonstrate this, and I never heard of anybody ever buying one. I never heard a dealer ever stocking one.
Yeah.
You know,
That's bad ideas layered upon a foundation of bad ideas.
oh Lord, he sent me one because I was writing the handgun leather
Oh.
column, and I couldn't even write it. I just went, nope,
Yeah.
sorry, put it in the box, sent it back
Yeah.
to him. I thought, well, maybe there's something that I didn't know. Actually reminds me of something we used to do with GI leather flap holsters. We used to compete in Mexico against the federales and people like that. And they had this thing called the El Presidente.
Right.
And so you would put your back to 5 or silhouette targets, and then on the command, you'd turn around, and you had to start with a empty chambered automatic. And so you would pull the gun out, run the slide, and then shoot at the 5 targets. Well, one of us on our team figured something out, or knew some old guy that used to do it or something. So we got old GI flap 1911 holsters, and we cut the flap off. But what we found out, and evidently it was a thing, that if you pulled the gun out, rotated the butt so it's 90 degrees pointing out to your right if you're right-handed, and then you push the gun down into the holster, it would actually rack the slide. Right? Yeah, don't try this at home, kids, okay? And then you pull it out, and then it would chamber around. And so we did the, position of with your hands like this, and beep, and as we turned around, we just reached down, and we came up firing. Well, of course, they were all like going, ay caramba, what?
Oh my! The rules are different south of the border.
The rules, and I guess I'm saying that just because it's a funny thing, but also, that's probably not a good idea. And so if you see a holster design that says, oh, and you do this, and you do this, and that's one thing.
Keep it simple, stupid, and I'll be the stupid in that equation.
It's true. So I am a leather holster carrier. The only time I don't use leather is with a pocket holster. I generally don't use leather.
Agreed.
I usually use some kind of, softer synthetic. I don't use Kydex. I've tried it, and they're just too uncomfortable for me. I have found, and I can't remember the name of it, but they used to make it was a holster out of horsehide, which is kind of impervious to the water. And so I used one of those as a pocket holster for a while. But other than that, if I put a holster on my belt, it's leather. Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to touch on, we're running out of time here, but hybrid holsters, Kydex and leather together. I'll have to say I've got a bunch of them. I'm not saying they're bad. I personally just have never seen the point. They've never really solved any problem for me. And I think they're butt ugly. So I've just never been a fan of those, but I know Crossbreed was, or is a big proponent of those. And I've got buddies that just swear by them, and they are, the best thing since sliced bread. I'm not saying they're not. It's just for me, never been a fan, but your thoughts on them, Roy, real quick?
Well, you're right. It's like not the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
But they do seem to work. Crossbreed makes a good holster. I've written them up.
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with them.
Yeah.
I just personally don't find them aesthetically pleasing. When I was at Bianchi, I was there while they developed a product called AccuMold, and what that was I think it was a 3-layer synthetic. So there was some kind of a hard liner, some kind of like a neoprene kind of mid, product, and then what looked like a sort of canvas, but it was ballistic nylon, whatever that is, right, on the outside. And then we would hot mold these to fit certain guns. And so they started out as police duty type guns. And became holsters, very popular, actually. I carried some when I was on the harbor unit. So it was like thermo molded. It wasn't Kydex, right? And that actually worked out pretty good. We sold it so well to the military and to the government that we started to make AccuMold concealment holsters. And I have to say, it was not bad. In other words, it was comfortable. It formed to you. It was lightweight. It fit the gun well. I would say the only downside was that it wore relatively fast.
Yeah.
So if you bought a concealment holster with a thumb brake and your gun was in and out of the holster every day, and you taking it off, putting it on your belt, and stuff like that, you'd get about a year, and then you had to buy another one. So.
Yep. Well, that's a good place to end this, except I have to make a confession, Roy, in front of you and the internet and the almighty. I was a huge Kydex fan. I was on SWAT when Kydex really became a thing, and I still have sheets of it. I almost built a vacuum forming table, so I've built holsters, I've built knife sheaths and neck knife sheaths, and I think I made a tactical pencil holder at some point. So it's not that I hate Kydex. I've been through it, and it has its place. But to me, in my FUD kingdom, leather is the way to go. So thanks everybody for joining us here on the Guns Magazine Presents the Guns Podcast. Make sure that you stop in and check out gunsmagazine.com along with our sister publication, AmericanHandgunner.com. That's where you can continue to read all of our great in-depth and non-dramatic articles about all the shooting stuff that we love. And also, you know what, Roy, I'd love to buy one of your books. How could I do that? Well, I'm going to answer that question. Go to fmgpubs.com. You can pick up Roy's Insider book. It's a great read, along with John Connor's Odd Angry Shot. That thing keeps flying off the shelves. But fmgpubs.com. And of course, I always say, please like and subscribe. That's how we keep our phony baloney jobs around here, by showing all of our subscribers. So if you want to support what we're doing, and we hope you do, make sure you like and subscribe. Check out gunsmagazine.com and AmericanHandgunner.com. And of course, sign up for our daily newsletters. It's not just enough to go to the website. You can have stuff delivered right to your inbox. So Roy Huntington, thank you for joining me for yet another entertaining and interesting discussion here on the Guns Magazine Presents the Guns Podcast. Of course, I am Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat, reminding you yet again, now get out there and get shooting.